What's up? I'm Alex the Entrepreneur. Today we're doing a Q&A. I'm basically covering a week worth of questions and I'm going to be answering them in this video. If you have your own question, please feel free to submit it. I do give priority to my students on the Complete Strapi course. So if you can use the Q&A there, make sure to do that. Alternatively, you can leave a question in the comments and I'll eventually address it too. So let's get started. We got Connor. Connor is asking about development to production using Git. And he says that he's going to be developing his app locally, but he will also be working with somebody else. And so he's asking for a way to manage multiple developers while working in the same Strapi application. And it's actually not that complicated, because if you think about it, you're gonna have very few points of attrition, i.e. you're gonna have very few points in which the code for your API is going to be drastically different, and that's because Strapi allows you to build new collection types and new APIs extremely rapidly. So that said, the simple setup that I've been using and that honestly just works is the simple setup consists of simply having your application and consists of using source control to keep track of all of your code, and then the other side of the application that you need to track is your database. So what you can do is you can create a development database that you're going to be sharing between developers, and you can provide those credentials through a .env file. As of the stable version, working with Strapi's environment variable is very easy and very efficient. So you're just going to have a .env.development file or a .env file that you're going to be sharing between developers, and that way you're going to be sharing both your collections, but at the same time, or your code via Git, and at the same time you're going to be sharing your database through that shared database. This makes it so that all developers are going to be on the same page. And the beauty of Strapi is that it provides a very thin abstraction layer on top of your database, and it makes it so that even if you're going to have mismatching versions, so you're going to have one version with one extra collection type and another version without it, they're both going to be working, because the only difference will be that the version without that extra collection type will simply not query for it. So it's not going to create any huge complication, because there's not going to be a mismatch in the schema, because the schema for the database is layered on top of it. It's not something that is done to the database, is laid on top of it. It's an abstraction on top of it, which makes it so that it's a very non-disruptive setup. So again, source code, source control your code, and shared database with a .env file. Thank you, Connor, for asking your question. Then we have Shailesh. Shailesh asks for user logged in status in navbar. Basically, he wants to build a navbar that is going to be showing a different status. You can have a navbar that will show you a login button if you're not logged in, and a navbar that will show you a various set of options if you are. The answer for this one is actually very, very straightforward. You're basically going to be receiving the user as a property. I'm not going to get into how you're going to log in and get all those properties, although I am going to be covering it in a new upcoming project that I'm going to be releasing for the Complete Strapi course, which is going to be an Instagram clone. I'm going to be covering literally this, but the idea, I'm going to give you the idea and I'm going to show you how to do it. You're going to receive the user object, and if the user object is empty, so not user object, then you're going to be displaying your not logged in navbar. Alternatively, if your user object is there, then you're going to be showing your logged in navbar. And if your logged in navbar uses the user object, then you can just pass that to it as well. So it's just a very simple Boolean logic, and it's a very straightforward setup. Next up, we got Sandeep Pandey, and they ask, how can I add 2 different Strapi content type in Gatsby homepage? Okay, this is a Gatsby related question. Specifically, they ask, how do you get multiple collection types in the same page? The answer is actually very straightforward. You go on GraphQL, you go on localhost :8000 _ GraphQL, you retrieve more than one collection type, and now you copy that GraphQL code and you put it in your page query. and then your page will receive more than one collection type. That means that you're going to have your data and your data dot one type of data, and then you're going to have your data dot second type of data, and then you just do whatever you want with them. So it's extremely straightforward. My only advice is just get that data through the GraphQL, so do it visually, and then once you start working with JavaScript, just console.log the object that your page receives, your page props, just log it out, so that way you know exactly what your next step is. Always use these partial logs whenever you're working, that way you're making your life easier. Joe asks, will your class be covering the latest version of Strapi? Does the version really matter? And the answer to this is yes. It's a resounding yes. And the reason is actually very simple. So first of all, why am I going to be covering the latest version? Because otherwise my course is outdated and everybody's going to hate it. So I'm forced to do that. And by the way, the course is already updated. I'm just going to be dropping an extra update with 4 hours of building an Instagram clone, which is going to be basically a project that is going to get you from zero to having a complete understanding of what Strapi does. And then through the other projects, you can go deeper on the specifics of building an e-commerce, building inventory, like more specific tasks. But by starting with this generic project, you're going to learn all about those topics. That was kind of my idea, and it's been a very widespread criticism of the course was that it tended to be a little too theory heavy, especially the first 4 hours were basically just a dump of this is how Strapi works, this is how you do it. And most people didn't really engage with that. If you do, they're still gonna be there. But what I'm doing is I have a very short 1 hour intro so that you buy the course in 1 hour, you know what you're doing. And then we're gonna have this 4 hour project that guides you through the entirety of Strapi. And then you can use more theory lesson if you wanna go deeper on the theory, or you can do more projects if you wanna go even deeper. So that's the answer, yes, I'm gonna be covering. The second reason, or the second part of the question is, does version really matter? And yes, it matters a lot. The reason why it does is because basically you can look at software just like a abandoned building. An abandoned building will be slowly destroyed by nature, slowly destroyed by people, and basically it's going to be completely, by the time, like it will slowly be eroded, and it will be looted, and it will be destroyed. And the reason why that happens is just because software is a human endeavor, and you have a thing called entropy, which means that, but beside going to this philosophy stuff, at the end of the day, new issues are found all the time, and that means that you just need to patch them. And so that's the biggest one, is security patches. That's the fundamental reason why you want to upgrade your software. And the other one is honestly the improved workflow. Typically, user feedback will bring better workflow. And in the case of Strapi, I have been working with Strapi from alpha, in the middle alpha, to complete all of the version of beta, and now we're in 3.0.1. And I've been working with all of those versions, literally every single version I've used. And I can assure you that the changes in workflow are worth it. Just the changes in workflow are worth it. They are a very good reason to improve, to upgrade. And the last one is definitely the documentation. So if you look at Strapi, like you look at Strapi, the software is just a bunch of code that somebody else wrote. Like the software in itself is not, it's definitely valuable, and you'll see the company soar because of what they did. But on the other end, the real value is actually the knowledge that is shared between people. Because the more knowledge we have related to the topic, the more it's easy for somebody else to get on board with it, and the deeper the understanding of the people that have been in it the most will get. So everybody wins by sharing documentation. And what happens with that is that the documentation will be there only for the latest version, because at the end of the day, I have a financial incentive to to even make this video. If you think about it, I have a financial incentive, and I have no incentive in making documentation for something that is not that nobody will ever use, such as the alpha 0.26 version, which would be the latest alpha version, which I actually believe is the most used version as of today, but it will be the most obsolete version as of a year from now. So I have zero financial interest in teaching something that is obsolete, even though I'm also expert at that. So And so what's the conclusion to that is you definitely want to be upgrading. You want to be upgrading as much as you can. Now Ernest shows me a warning, and I'm addressing this for a couple of reasons. So basically Ernest shows me a warning related to fetching images when you're building your GraphQL with Strapi blog or products in this case, so e-commerce. And basically says that multiple nodes are resolving to the same image, and that's because every image now is automatically optimized by default by Strapi, and it's also resized. So you're going to have your normal image, then you're going to have your small, your large, and your medium image being cut, and you're also going to have the thumbnail size. So basically you get the normal image, and then you get 4 extra image sizes, and that's confusing GraphQL, or rather it's confusing Gatsby during the build process. But I'm pretty sure Gatsby will default to one of them, so you're not going to be concerned with that. And but the main thing I want to address is that some people believe that a warning is an error. Like that to me is just wrong. A warning is not an error. A warning is a warning. A warning is telling you that you're doing something that may be wrong or that may cause issues. 100%, it's a warning, but you want to be conscious of your warnings. And most warnings that you'll get when you work with React or Node.js have to do with linters. In this case, it doesn't, but most of the time you will get some warning from linters. So, for example, one of the ones you will find, even if you take my courses, will be the double equal sign versus using the triple equal sign. And from my experience, most of the time it's actually best to just use the double equal sign. It's just that some people would rather have their type tight. They would have their type being tighter, and so they would rather use the triple equals, and that's the default linter setup. I haven't found a reason to spend even a minute to remove that, but I can assure you that you can keep working with a warning and you're not gonna have any downsides. So don't get concerned with that, just be conscious of it. In this specific case, I think Gatsby handles itself, but this is basically a sign that the Strapi team will most likely have to update the GraphQL integration. Shailesh asks about redirecting after a signup. He basically says, I have a separate page for the signup and the home page. How do I redirect to a different page and remove the link? Okay, so removing the signup link, etc. We already talked about that. You're gonna pass the user object to your component. So that's how you do it. The other side, the other question is, how do you redirect? If you're working with React Router DOM, you just call the property called props.history, and then you do a push on it. You just do props.history.push, and then you put the URL where you want to go. The only catch to this is you want to make sure to await your signup method. You want to make sure to await that, so that you ensure that the signup is successful before you redirect. That's really about it. So this.props.history.push on any route is going to work. If you don't have that property, just use with router, which is a way for you to get those properties basically when you work with React Router. And Shailesha also asks about using Next.js. So I'm using Next.js in my project. Can I use the same syntax for state management? The answer is yes. Can you use hooks? Can you use the classes? You can do the same thing with Next.js. There is literally, Next.js is just a framework on top of React. So there is very little difference. The only main difference will be a bunch of tools that you're going to use. If I'm not mistaken, you're not going to need to use Helmet when it comes to your head, because your head document head for your HTML document, because it's just going to handle that. So you want to look in the docs for that. And the other main change is the links, which again are going to be provided by the Next.js API. So you would just want to use those couple of extra additions. And I actually highly recommend Next.js whenever you're dealing with something that may change, that you can't necessarily turn into a static site, especially if there's login involved. But you also want to have SEO for it. You want to have your server-side rendering, which it's kind of the biggest, it's like the final boss, the evil, like authentication and server-side rendering are the two like big hurdles, big challenges when it comes to single page applications. Everything else to me is like like anybody can pick up extremely rapidly. But when it gets to SSR and authentication, they start to get very nuanced, because authentication exposes you to a ton of security threats, and SSR just makes your app architecture so much more just complicated to deal with. But that said, yeah, you're just gonna have to adapt a little bit, but most of your skills are gonna transfer. And Sanjeev asks, can you please create a tutorial for user registration confirmation email, then only user can log in? So this has been addressed by the Strapi team. As of version 3.0.1, this is exactly what happens. If you set up your users and permission to require confirmation, which I'll look up how to do that. But if you do that, then Strapi will send a confirmation email, and only if the confirmation email is clicked, then it will let the user log in. So this is the new version, and as of the new version, that's exactly how it works. Then we got Shubham, which asks, can you please make a video on how to implement post view count? So this is like the classic, it's kind of like the hello world for Strapi. So basically you're gonna have your articles content type, and you're gonna have a variable called view count. Then you're gonna create a custom controller that is called, for example, increase view count or view count, and then you're gonna be pinging this controller via a AJAX request whenever your page is visited. By doing that, you're gonna be able to increase the view count. If you want to do something on the API level, you could also just customize your controller to increase the number every time you return a response. You could do that. I don't think it will be an accurate view count. I think a more accurate view count will be based on a simple script that you put on the page that pings your API, but you could also do that. So it's a very straightforward operation. Custom controller that increases view count. You will receive a request where it receives the ID of the post, and then and that's it. It just receives the ID of the post. You're gonna get that post by updating it, and you're gonna increment your count. You can even use your MongoDB increment operator if you want. Alternatively, you can just write, you can just get the current count and increase it by 1. Okay, so this is that's it for the Q&A for this week. Feel free to add your own questions. Make sure to use the Q&A in the course if you have access to that. Alternatively, you can leave a question here, or I'll be answering your question throughout the other videos. I hope this is a format that you enjoyed, and have an amazing day.